So I'm Claudia Reisner, and it is Wednesday, the 20th of September, 2023. I am really happy to welcome everybody to our guest speaker series this evening. We've got two special guests who are going to talk to us about their organization, Repatriate Our Patriots. And we are doing this as a co-hosting function with the Veterans for Peace, both the Santa Fe and the Albuquerque chapter. And we've got both presidents on board. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. I'd like to start out by introducing our guest speakers. Dee James. Dee volunteers as the Chief Executive Officer for Repatriate Our Patriots, and that is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that focuses on bringing deported veterans home, preventing future deployments, and bridging the gaps for a successful repatriation. She is a U.S. Army veteran and a military spouse. Dee served on active duty for 6 years and completed 2 combat tours in Iraq in 2003 and 2005. Dee has over 15 years of experience working with service members, military families, wounded veterans, and families of the fallen in a nonprofit and federal in the nonprofit and federal government environments. I'm going to go ahead and introduce Nick as well, and then you two can decide who wants to go first. Nick Paz is a international human rights liaison at Repatriate Our Patriots, and he is a passionate advocate for veterans' rights. Nick is a native of Las Cruces, New Mexico, and spends the majority of his time in Mexico and Central America. Nick served on active duty from 2007 to 2013 in the Army as an infantryman. He deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan. Nick has over 5 years of experience assisting deported veterans in Mexico and Central America with a deep understanding of the unique challenges faced by those deported from the U.S. So, folks, please join me in welcoming them. We're thrilled to have them both on board. And Dee or Nick, who's going first?
I'll go ahead and take it. I'll go ahead and do an introduction about our organization, and then I'll pass it to Nick so that he can share some of his experiences with our veterans in the field. So, as Claudia said, I am the CEO for ROP, that's the abbreviation for Repatriate Our Patriots. And I've been with the organization for almost 3 years. And I served as a board member as well. And I'm also part of the National LULAG Subcommittee on Deported Veterans. I'm the chair for that. And we are our mission at Repatriate Our Patriots is really to aid those who have been deported, prevent future deportations, and bridge the gaps when the veterans come back home, either on humanitarian parole or permanently with their legal status. We don't want this to happen to anyone else, so we are also collaborating with military units and local government offices to prevent this from happening in the future. The organization was founded in 2019 by an Army veteran. Her name was Brandy, and she stepped down to take care of her family and engage in other endeavors. But really, Repatriate Our Patriots has been an effort and a collaboration of a bunch of veterans who just want to take care of our brothers and sisters and not leave anyone behind. We fund everything out of donations that we get from the public. We are very responsive. We tend to stay on response and on alert a lot, just because a lot of times the cases from veterans when they've been deported, we find out through word of mouth. There's really no system that Department of Homeland Security or USCIS has that can let us know where veterans have been deported to or how many. And that's one of the challenges that we're facing right now. We are the majority of our members are based out of El Paso, Texas. Nick stays in Mexico and travels to other parts of the country to visit some of our veterans. I am located in Virginia, in Williamsburg, Virginia. So we do a lot of our work virtually, and then we meet for some events. I'm an Army veteran, and my husband served in the Army as well for 29 years. And we Fort Hood was his last duty station, and that's where we retired here in Virginia. I currently work for the Air Force. I'm a program analyst. I work at Langley Air Force Base. So to all of the Air Force veterans, I hear those jets flying every day. Um, so it's been great. The team there is very supportive of the work that I do. I'm going to hand it over to Nick.
Thanks, sis. Thank you for welcoming me into the space. What I do specifically with the organization is I spend 1 week to 3 months at a time in a given location where the deported veteran is. That could be from Matamoros to Tijuana, Juarez, all through Michoacan, Guanajuato, everywhere in El Salvador, San Pedro Sula, Honduras, and all over Guatemala. When I'm there, I'm bearing witness to the suffering of the deported veteran. That could be if they're living in austerity, if violence envelops their environment, are they living around corruption, not only from the state, but from transnational criminal organizations? Are they being targeted? Have they been targeted for training? And are they eligible for benefits? If they are eligible for benefits through the VA, then we'll do our best to help them out and connect them. And then we're also working with the Biden administration's MVETS program. That takes two agencies. That's the Veterans Affairs, and then the Department of Homeland Security. That's DHS, CBP, and ICE. And then we're in collaboration with the ACLU of Southern California, Immigrant Defenders, and other nonprofits to focus on this problem in particular. VFP is one of our partners, actually, out of Southern California. So is there any questions so we could get started? I know that this is probably a new subject to you guys.
I was gonna go into a couple of the things for about how veterans are deported, just for some of you who may not be familiar, or you may not even know that this was happening until this meeting was brought up. Hi, Miss Pat, do you have a question? I see you have your hand up.
Pat Gaston.
Oh, sorry. Hit it by mistake. My bad.
Okay.
Okay, not a problem. So, as you may know, non-citizen service members have served since the Revolutionary War for over 200 years, and this is 20% of the Congressional Medal of Honor recipients are non-citizen service members. And some of the laws, right, that have shifted and have been implemented for immigration. Thus, this is what the deported veterans come into contact when they leave the military as non-citizens. I served in the military for 6.5 years as a non-citizen. I had a green card, and I was not able to obtain my citizenship due to deployment. The mission takes priority, and we deployed in 2003, and I actually missed my naturalization ceremony 3 times because of training or deployment. And I left in 2006. Unfortunately, I'm a survivor of military sexual trauma. And when this happened, I wanted nothing to do with the military, and I just left. And I ETS, I didn't even take the time to out process, do anything medical for myself. Really just getting out was a survival technique for me, right? Leaving that organization. And the citizenship was the least thing I was thinking about. It was not even in my mind. Nobody, while I was in the service, nobody asked me about my citizenship. Nobody asks, hey, where's your green card or your passport or anything, right? So this is not something that comes up in conversations, and it's not tracked in the military. There is no report that comes out that says, hey, you have this amount of non-citizen citizen service members in your unit. You need to make sure they obtain their citizenship. There's nothing like that. They will report, as you all may know, they will report who and how many are late on their government travel card. They will let you know. There's a list that comes up in staff meetings, and it says, hey, so and so is late on their government travel card, right? But they don't track. They don't track the non-citizen service members, because this is really not an issue for us. Our military ID card becomes our passport, and we ourselves, we even forget that we're not citizens, because we feel like we're citizens, we're serving this country. And a lot of veterans were falsely told by recruiters or their chain of command that it was automatic. We see this a lot with Vietnam veterans who served in the Vietnam era, that they were told that it was automatic if they joined the military and served this country. And then some other veterans like myself applied for naturalization, but either the government failed to follow their applications, or mission took priority. Some service members, they never received the notices. They applied and they never received their notices to complete some of the steps to finish their process because they were either deployed or they were overseas. And so there's no, again, like I said, and this is a big issue, there's no caseworker or a liaison assigned to track those cases. So when a service member who is not a citizen leaves the military, there are another immigrant citizen who is not a U.S. citizen, right? They're immigrants. They are here only, well, legal resident status. And if there is, as many encounter either maladaptive coping mechanisms to deal with their injuries that they face either during their service, and they did not get treated, right? They may face some DUIs, some charges with drugs, etc. And if it's considered a felony, because of the immigration law that was established in 1996 by President Clinton, a felony is considered a deportation offense, deportable offense. So we had some veterans who have a nonviolent offense with, for example, marijuana, right? And they have been deported. So they don't take into consideration the fact that they are veterans, that they may be struggling with some mental health issues, that they have not received the care that through the VA, not because they don't want, not because they have, it's not available to them, but because I know I can speak from experience. It took me 10 years to even file my VA claim, right? Somebody is always worse than I am. Somebody always has it worse than me, right? And so a lot of veterans struggle with that, on wanting or going to the VA to seek assistance, because we've always put everybody else before us. And it's hard to get out of that habit. Nick is known for that. He's always, he still does it. And I think we all do it, right? But veterans struggle when they come out. And right now on our database, we have close to 400 veterans that either are in deportation proceedings, they're currently deported to all over the world. We have them in Jamaica, we have them in Haiti, we have them in Canada, we have one veteran in England, and all over Central America. In Mexico, the majority are in Mexico, but there is no tracking system. And another thing that a lot of people associate with veteran deportation is that they're Hispanics, the Latin community, right? And they're all over. We have some in Dominican Republic, Jamaica, we have them in Kenya. So it's all it's not just Hispanics that are deported. And this is something that our brothers, Black deported veterans of America, are, trying to bring up, because there's some of those veterans that are being left behind or unheard because they're not close to a border. Mr. Reynolds, do you have a question or a
I
comment?
do. I don't mean to, I didn't want to interrupt you, Dee, because
No,
you're
go
doing
ahead.
a great job. But what really, well, first, what you're saying bothers me a lot. But secondly, what confuses me is when you enter the service, you take an oath to the United States, to your fealty for the United States. And it seems counterintuitive that you would take the oath and swear fealty and loyalty to the United States, but yet not, in my opinion, automatically become a citizen. And I think there's a huge problem with that, in that we don't recognize your willingness to sacrifice for us, and we're not willing to give you what is really costs us nothing, to become a citizen of the U.S. And I appreciate you and Nick both bringing this up. Thank you.
No,
Well,
absolutely.
Mr. Could I take this real
Yeah,
quick?
go ahead. Yeah.
Mr. Reynolds, I'm glad you pointed out this hypocrisy. Outside of the MVets initiative, veterans coming home on a humanitarian visa, which is not, even citizenship, it's a 1-year process, and they may not get their citizenship. They may be redeported. Outside of this program, the MVets initiative, there's another way that veterans can come back to the United States if they're deported, and that's if they have an honorable discharge and if they die while being in exile. There have been a handful of veterans that have died in squalor for simply not having access to the benefits that they earned, that they're not begging for. They earned this. They served in Vietnam, in the jungles in Vietnam, patrolled the Euphrates and the Tigris, and for simply not having access to the VA healthcare system, they died in poverty away from their family. And they're buried in a national cemetery all throughout the country. Actually, one of them is buried in Hobbs, New Mexico. His name is Jose Lopez. He was deported for a nonviolent offense. He got his feet under him in the city of Chihuahua, Mexico, got a degree as a teacher. He wasn't able to make ends meet because it's hard to make $1 in Mexico. So he started working in the maquiladores, the warehouses in the heart of the city, along with being a teacher. While he was in his house, somebody broke in and shot him while he was in the shower, blew his head off, and then he later died in the hospital. But he's buried in Hobbs, New Mexico, with full honors. So that's one of the things that we want you guys to help amplify the voice of, this isn't right. That to be buried full honors after being deported, is a disgrace, and we need your help getting angry and holding the feet to the fire of our elected officials, because there's a lot of promises when Veterans Day comes up and Memorial Day comes up. Our politicians love to hang us up like Christmas ornaments, but there's no action behind their words, and that goes for both sides of the aisle.
Yeah, and in some, what is troubling here is that President Biden and Secretary Mayorkas introduced in 2021 introduced the initiative MVETS, where he brought the VA and he brought Department of Homeland Security together to help veterans come back, but also assist them in obtaining their benefits, right? 83 have come back to the United States since 2021, but we do not know how many of those have legal permanent status here or are U.S. citizens. Many, like we know, they are here only on a humanitarian parole, and that it's only for a year, and then they have to reapply for extensions. And those fees for extensions are $750, and it's not waived for them. They're asking to pay that. They can request a waiver, but they're not. It's not guaranteed. And once they pay that fee, it's not it's not reimbursable. If, for example, if they don't get their extension, they don't reimburse it. These veterans who come back, they come back a lot, the majority without even a VA claim, without a pension check, without any income, right? And it's really hard for their families to come up with the money to ask for extension. So this is on top of them having this clock up above their head that's saying it's like 1 month, 2 months, 3 months left, right before my humanitarian parole expires. Now they have to also think about not only reintegrating with their families and attending to their medical issues that they may have, but now they have this financial burden over their heads, right? Because there is a fee that cannot be waived. I do have to say, and I have to give the flowers where the flowers are due, the VA has done a great job at facilitating resources and all throughout the VAs that we have dealt with, California, Texas, New Mexico, Missouri, right, and connecting these veterans with services. However, we have not received the same support from the DHS side of the house. We have requested data about how many have been deported, where locations, so that so that our organization like Nick, right, we can send him to El Salvador. As reported, there may be 10 veterans that were deported to El Salvador, right? But we have no data, and we know that this is just a database pool. As simple as that. I am very sure that it does not take more than just a data pool. But in some cases, the government deports people without even asking if they have served in the military. And in most cases, there are some judges that are even prohibited from even considering their military service when decided whether to deport them or not. And that is very tragic, because as we know, you guys are probably familiar with, there's a veterans treatment court, right? That in a lot of these cases, veterans could have access, right, to be given an opportunity for rehabilitation instead of, charging them and then deporting them. And another crazy thing is that when they are charged with a crime, they're given their sentence and they serve their sentence. Full sentence served, and then they send them to ICE detention facilities until they're deported. So none of these veterans who have committed a crime were just deported and not, taken into have them complete their sentence. And like Nick said, there's a couple ways to come back, and one is in a box, and that's just tragic. We were good enough to fight for this country and give our lives for it, but we're not good enough to be given a second chance at life, right? At rehabilitation and accessing all of the services and benefits that we've earned with our service. So this is why this is very important. And I was so glad that you guys, that the caucus reached out to us to have us and to share what that's going on with veterans who are not citizens, and all of the veterans that are deported all over the world. I know that El Paso is not too far from there, and we have been able to work with the commissioner there for El Paso and with other city organizations to help implement some type of kind of notices and alerts to either the police departments, right, so that they know to ask, hey, have you served in the military, right? So that it can be prevented, and then some organizations like us can be alerted that there is a veteran that has been detained. It is a hard it's a hard thing to do and to get accomplished, right? And to make sure it follows through. But we know that with you guys and other organizations within the community, we're a step closer.
And we're also taking like a holistic approach when veterans come in through the port of entry of El Paso. sometimes, you know, in order to get benefits, you have to have a general and honorable conditions. And sometimes these veterans fall through the cracks, not having that type of discharge. So stakeholders within the city and county of El Paso have come together and helped with housing, because if they don't qualify for benefits, that means they don't qualify for HUD-VASH. And we would like to see something similar, if it's even possible, in the state of New Mexico. If there's a veteran that wants to relocate, and I've already talked to Councilor Bencomo in the city of Las Cruces, and she told me, she pointed me into the Community of Hope, and I spoke with their director. If a veteran comes in Doñana County, that he'll be housed, and he'll have that housing for at least a year, from what they told me. And then, you know, from there, you pull yourself up by your bootstraps. We had to take into consideration that these men and women who came into the country came in at 2, 3, 4 years old. They're the original DACA. Their elementary school was spent here, middle school, high school. All their memories are here. They're culturally American. So when they get deported to these we'll call them places of origin, because it's not their home. They don't know the language. They speak funny. So that makes it a lot easier for them to be targeted when they first get deported to Mexico. If they come to Mexico, it takes them at least 6 months to get their ID card. And that makes them very vulnerable to be targeted, not only by transnational criminal organizations, but by cops more often than not. And it's very scary. One thing that we're really upset about is that Secretary Mayorkas, when he said, when he put out the memo that they're going to be working on this program, he promised that they're not going to be deporting veterans. Now, through my travels, and I travel often all throughout the country, in Rosarito, I came across a veteran who was deported well into the MVETS initiative. So I brought this up with the second in command for DHS for MVETS, and he said, yes, they're still practicing the disgusting process of deporting veterans. And we've asked for, over 2 months for that data. Where are you deporting them to? Because, yeah, they brought 83, and that's like putting lipstick on a pig, right? They brought 83 back. How many are citizens? How many have their legal permanent residence? And how many are here on humanitarian visa? But out of those 83 during that process, how many have you deported during that time? And they're quiet, so it's a very frustrating process. We're like trying to empty the ocean with a spoon, and we need all the help we can get.
All we asked was
I'd like
for
to-
the. Go ahead. Yes.
Excuse me. Yeah, I'd just like to jump in here. So, Commissioner Shannon Reynolds, Nick, who you've been talking to, is a commissioner down in Doña Ana. So, Shannon, do you want to address what Nick was talking about there?
Well, what I wanted to add is what I feel, okay, and what I think I see is we need more veterans serving in politics, because when we talk about the veterans here that are for peace, I don't know of any veterans who have actually had a chance to fight in a war that want to have another war. I don't think any veteran who served in combat or any combat region or has friends or and have served wants to expose anyone to that environment any more than we have to. However, they also, if they understand combat, they recognize the sacrifice, the risk, and what goes into that, and wouldn't dare turn their backs on a comrade that they fought with and have to deport them to a situation that was risky for them and put them in more peril than what they had in combat. I just think that one of the major solutions to this, when you look at Congress, when you look at our elected officials, I can tell you we have less than a handful of elected officials here in New Mexico that are actually served in the military. And I'm not saying everybody qualifies, but I have to say that probably we've got to get people who understand what you're talking about, can relate to the problems, and really have some sort of camaraderie and obligation to our fellow soldiers, to actually be a part of the solution. And so my recommendation is that every time you get a chance to talk to a veteran who's capable of serving in politics, it asks them to at least try or support somebody who is. That's all. Thank you.
And I really like a comment that Mark has put in the chat. Those who've done the bleeding now should do the leading. And I think he's spot on with that. We've also got Commissioner Josh Jones, He's up in Rio Rancho. Sir, do you have a question?
Yeah, if you guys could speak to and let me know if I'm off base, but I'm recalling a gentleman who I served with who was from South Korea, who was active duty, and during his time in service, he wasn't getting out. Um, I want to say the South Korean Army or their military wanted to pull him from our military to join their military, and his parents were from South Korea. But again, he was born here, American born, and they almost deported him to go serve in the Korean Army while he was serving in the military army. So, do you guys come across any of that in your work as well?
He's good. He's not deported right now.
No, so this happened back. I want to say it was 2007 when I was active duty in the Air Force, but he was very close to being deported to South Korea to serve in the military while he was active duty in our military.
I've
We-
haven't
yeah,
come
we
across.
haven't.
But
Yeah,
go ahead.
we haven't come across any of those cases at the moment, but about 2 or 3 days ago, we were contacted through our Veterans Coalition by one of the attorneys to let us know that there was an active duty sailor stationed in San Diego who has a year left in his contract, and he has no idea on how to even start his citizenship process. And she overheard him asking, I think, or speaking with his dad about paying an immigration attorney to file for his naturalization. This is exactly what we are trying to prevent, right? Active duty service members right now, or even National Guard and reserves, who are not being asked or tracked or given the resources to make sure that they complete their naturalization before they leave the military. This attorney was at the right place at the right time, so that she overheard that, right? And now we're working currently to see if we can connect them with somebody there in San Diego with the JAG office to help him out with that process. Because imagine if he didn't even ask, he would have been out of the military without a citizenship. Mr. Carroll.
Yes, I was just wondering, I'm trying to think this through a little bit about how people would react to some of the things you proposed. And I think most people, if there's a veteran who's honorably discharged from the military, I think most people would support the idea that when they apply for a green card, that they go to the top of the list. Now, I mean, I just in El Paso, or I lived there a long time ago, but I lived there for a long time, and we had at that time over 100,000 people who lived in El Paso with green cards. So why wouldn't they just have a procedure that if somebody got an honorable discharge from the military after their contract is up, that they would automatically go to the top, go to the top of the list of people applying for green cards.
So
Yeah,
the bare minimum to get into the service is a legal permanent resident or a green card. So they already have a green card while they're in the service. It's when they get out of the service if they don't. When they get out of the service, if they don't have their citizenship, then they're open to
all the immigration laws.
and yeah, so so in 1996 they changed the law. So if you have it's called an aggravated felony. If you have an aggravated felony that makes you subject to deportation, they took away discretion from the immigration judges that used to be able to take into account your military service. Now, one of the things we have to be very careful about is the narrative of the deserving immigrant, the whole honorable discharge, because a lot of Vietnam veterans paved the way for Gulf War and global war on terror veterans to have the healthcare that we have. And what I mean by that is, like, you guys, a lot of the Vietnam veterans, a lot of my older brothers are undiagnosed with PTSD, and sometimes they give them a bad conduct discharge. So, taking that into account, that may have been the reason why a lot of these brothers have a bad conduct, whether it's a TBI or a traumatic brain injury or a MST or a PTSD from combat. They are barred from the Hagel memo allows them to get a cert discharge upgrade, but that takes a year, 2 years, even if you're working at warp speed. So we have to take that into account. Like some of these guys, they're not all right in the head, but it's okay. We're our brother's keeper. You know what I mean?
I'm just surprised that people have, that everybody in the military has a green card. I mean, I served a long time ago, but I would be really surprised if a lot of the people I served with, had green cards.
And
But
I will tell you, I will say this, the majority of my comrades that I served with between 2003 to 2000, between 2001 to 2006, they didn't know I was not a US citizen because it never comes up in conversation, right? As there's no meeting or anything. And like I said earlier, nobody is asking anybody for their citizenship because a lot of people assume that either you have to be a US citizen to serve, right? Or when you come in, you get it automatically. And that is something that recruiters use a lot. That was something that was promised to me by my recruiter, that I would get college tuition and my citizenship if I joined the military. But we sign a contract to serve 3 to 4 years, 6 years, however many, right? But they don't sign a contract to make sure that we receive that citizenship. And right now, I do have to give props to the Air Force. They have started graduating airmen from basic training and doing their naturalization ceremony at the same time. So when they come into basic, yes, when they come into basic, they have formed a partnership with DHS so that when they come to basic, they fill out all of the forms that are required for their naturalization paperwork. And while they're in basic training, they're processing their naturalization. So by the time they graduate, they can do their naturalization ceremony. They have been 2 graduations that we know of that they have graduated citizenship. So that lets me know that it can be done, right? But it also puts into question that why are they doing it right now, especially when the numbers in recruitment are down. This happened.
Well,
Go ahead.
I think you're answering your question, Dee.
Yes.
I mean, the recruiters are really struggling to make their numbers, so they need to be a little nicer to folks. I don't want to cut you off. We've got 2 questions. But I do want to make sure that we get to an opportunity tonight to talk about this HR 4569. So let me let Bob Carroll and Charles Paul ask their questions, but then could we go and talk about that a little bit, because we've got
Yes,
some people
absolutely.
who need to sign off at 6, and I want to have that conversation. So Bob, was that your question? Is that it, sir?
yeah, that's all I have.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I have a lot of questions, but I think I'd have to talk to them, call them up and talk to them.
I do want to say that I
Okay.
did drop the summary sheet into the chat. It's a PDF 1-page document that covers a lot. So if you want to take it, want to download it and take it for later. One of the main things 3 top things that HR 4569 is covering, it will ask DHS to provide a study and a report of any non-citizen veterans who have been removed by the United States, right? The number 2, they want an information system on veterans subject to removal. So basically, they want DHS to create a protocol that will identify non-citizen veterans who may be either in proceedings for deportation, or they have committed an aggravated felony, right? That is a deportation process. So this will help veterans be identified before they are deported, which is critical. And to one of the comments earlier, right, about military veterans need to serve in politics, that another thing that they want to form, it's a military family immigration advisory committee. So they want to bring in military families and veterans that will be tasked with providing at least recommendations to the Homeland USCIS and DHS on the discretion to whether an individual should be granted the termination for removal proceedings, or should be granted parole, or it can be like the continuation of their removal process. This is critical because you have to speak with the family members and the veterans and those who are or have been in those positions. And it will also, they will ask and will direct DHS and DOD to establish a joint program, basically what the Air Force is doing right now, right? To ensure that members of the military have that pathway to citizenship, and that there is a tracking system or a tracking process where we can make sure that is done. So basically the efforts that the Air Force is conducting right now, this bill will mandate every branch of every service to do, which that will stop the bleeding, right, to begin with. And then it will also, they want to, they want information for their recruiters, and kind of to coordinate with each military, like at the entrance point, which is MEP station, right? I know it was MEP station for me, to have information provided to new recruits about the naturalization process. And I did found out during the convention in New Mexico that the Navy has actually been mandated to do that. They have to show when their recruits, when they sign their contract, one of the checklist things that they have to do if they're not citizens is they have to show them, there's several videos that they have, they talk to them about the different paperwork and forms and offices that they have to visit. So kind of reminding them like, hey, this is, you have to take the steps to get your naturalization, which is great because it takes out the part of, oh, it's automatic, right? Nick, you have something to say?
Yeah, well, this is Mrs. James is talking about the bill. One of the things I want to bring up is how can this group collectively make things actionable? And I would rely on the commissioners that are on the phone, both in Rio Rancho and Doña Ana County. Commissioner Reynolds, if you want to collaborate and work on a process for, there's a deported veteran that's going to be coming from Juarez to Las Cruces, and one of the things that we're having trouble with in the state of Texas, you know how progressive they are, is getting driver's license and getting housing. Even with all the stakeholders we have in El Paso, funding is an issue. But I would love for this Vietnam era veteran, when he comes home to Las Cruces, to be received with open arms. He wasn't even deported for a criminal offense. He was deported because he was honest and said he was moving to Mexico. So that made his legal status null and void. So they didn't allow him back into the country. When he did that, it was in 2007. I think that's when the start of the drug war happened in Juarez. So he experienced a whole world of pain. Yeah, I believe I have your contact information already, Commissioner. But yeah, I would love to work with anybody who's willing to get their hands dirty. And the thing that we're not keeping in mind, from the federal government's perspective, is that they think that once the deported veteran comes home, that's it. You're be happy with that. And in essence, they're creating a skid row wherever they drop these men off, because we have to keep in mind they've been incarcerated for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. They've been deported for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. So that idea of them having a relationship with the family doesn't always manifest. They're treated like strangers when they first come home, because their family doesn't even know who they are. They're afraid to visit them, because in all honesty, they're living in war zones. So and then on top of that, if they're on a humanitarian visa, they're not guaranteed a worker's permit. So it takes 6 months to a year.
3 to 6 months, yeah.
6 months to a year for them to get a worker's permit. So if they're not having their benefits and they're not allowed to work, that's essentially that's essentially akin to slowly murdering somebody if you're not allowing them to earn for themselves.
So Nick, I'd like to just step in here for a second. We've got a couple of people who are going to be signing off. We've got Cynthia, and Cynthia works for Congresswoman Teresa Leger Fernandez. She is on the call. She wants to brief her congresswoman about this. This is why she joined us. So I would like to connect the two of you with her. Would both of you please put your phone numbers and emails in the chat? And then I'd like to turn this to Charles Powell. He's got his hand up. Over to you, sir.
Yes, Veterans for Peace went to Santa Fe right after our present governor was elected. We went accompanying deported veteran Cesar Lopez, and it turned out he had been deported because of a conviction in New Mexico. He was convicted of a marijuana possession charge, and she did agree to hear him. So he was able to put his request in writing and to satisfy her, and she did pardon him for that offense, and that did pave the way for his returning to the U.S. legally. I should point out that most of the deported veterans are deported on these offenses, these aggravated offenses, which are closely connected to their military service. PTSD, depression, drug use, alcohol use leads to risky behavior, risky and sometimes criminal behavior. So their deportations often are closely connected to behaviors that they picked up in our military. And then the final point I want to make is that Congress can fix this. And what Dee has been saying, what Nick has been saying, is that yes, Congress can fix this. The oath that recruits take in the military is very close to the oath of naturalization. It's almost word for word the same oath. So to me, it would make sense to say if an individual takes either of these oaths, they are a citizen. If anything, the military oath goes further than the naturalization oath in that it includes pledging to fight and to possibly die. For what that you're willing to do this. So anyway, Congress should fix it. We should have some meetings where we organize to start a campaign to get Congress to fix this. Thank you.
I think those are excellent ideas, Charles. And Mark also put Mark, why don't you just speak with us? You've got a couple of things that you've been putting in there about Congressman Vasquez. Do you want to share that with the group, sir?
I just got an email from them earlier this afternoon about an online, what do they call it here? Coffee with your congressman. So I included the site RSVP so you can be on there. And if you can't make it, there's also a site to send them your thoughts on whatever topic. It seemed to me that would be a great place to send comments about this issue.
Good. So I think Nick and Dee, you're both probably welcome to do it, even though you're not constituents of Congressman Vasquez. He's a wonderful person, and I think he would like to hear about this. And he certainly has an open line and an open door about veterans issues. Tammy Bryant, are you still on board? Okay. I thought she might have had a question. Do we have any other questions? Dorothy, Diane, Bob, do we have any other questions? One of the things I wanted to find out, I know about this bill that's in Congress. Is there anything that we could do at the state level with our legislators for a memorial or a resolution that would support the type of work that the changes that we need done?
So during the COVID, I was working with Councilman Vasquez at the time, and we passed a resolution recognizing the plight of the deported veteran. One thing that we could do, all politics is local. Before we see it on the federal level, we're going to see it on the county, state, city level. Is the re-entry of these deported veterans. That means working on basic necessities to help with a better quality of life. That's ID cards, voter registration. Once they're eligible for voter registration, housing, getting that foundation of Maslow's pyramid, so to be able to have. To be able to pursue their passions. They don't need to necessarily walk on water backwards, moonwalk to be American citizens. Just them living and enjoying their grandkids is good enough with me. I just want them to.
Yeah, so if we could, if New Mexico could draft up something, right, to where maybe it's like a reintegration, kind of, I don't know what we could call it, reintegration path or something, right, where it puts some. It asks the community organizations that could provide housing to take in consideration that they are veterans who were deported and they're just now being repatriated. The same for ID cards. We have a lot of issues with veterans having issues obtaining their ID cards and driver's license. Like if they don't have that, then it's really hard to access any other resource, really. The same with workers permit. It's taken 3 to 4 months for them to even get a workers permit, which it shouldn't take that long, right? And it's so something like that could really help veterans have a good start at their life and make sure they focus on reintegrating with their families and on their health.
That sounds good. Let me ask Dorothy. She's the chair of our Committee for Veterans Advocacy. Is there something else we should know about this, Dorothy? Is Dorothy still on board? Holy Toledo. Okay.
We spoke
anyone
too
else-
long.
I'm sorry, Diane?
No, I said we spoke too much.
No, that's okay. Okay.
Well,
do you-
I guess I was just, it seems like we talked about a lot of different things, and I just wanted to know, because she just mentioned, or they both just mentioned about getting to the city and the county first. I think we need to do something with our state and get something first, because
You would think there's a resolution or something
Yeah.
to be passed in the legislature.
And Gail
Well,
Tracy was just in my house saying hello. She thought I was just sitting at my dining room table, but I'm listening to you. And then she listened to part of it, and she was very concerned. She was like, "Oh, this is all new," and she's our majority leader, right, in the
Yeah.
House. So
Yeah.
but I don't. Has anyone passed a resolution in any other states? Is there something we can look at? Because I know people share information and bills and stuff like that, but it needs. I mean, this is very emotional, but I don't know what the steps should be.
We passed a resolution in the city of Las Cruces, and also a year before that, in 2019, my mentor, former Representative Rudy Martinez, introduced that same resolution with, I believe she was Senate Pro Temp at the time, Mary Kay Papin, but it fell in committee. But I could send you that information. That's no problem. One of the
Would you
things I want
please,
to.
Nick? We would
Yeah,
love that. Send us any drafts and send us what has passed and give us something to work with. And Rudy Martinez is on the call. And Rudy, it's wonderful to see you here, but we can work with you as well to try to get the wording on this and bump it up to a state level. Our session is mid-January to mid-February this year. It's a short session, but if we can get stuff to them early during the interim, the next few months here, maybe we can get something done, Nick and Dee.
Okay.
Shannon, you've got your hand up, sir.
Yeah. Something that I think may help is the biggest challenge here is publicity. And you're talking about somebody coming over from Juarez, okay, and you want me to meet with them. My recommendation is that we create like a section on our webpage that says unpatriated repatriates or something like that, and we do profiles of these people and start to publish that to all of our congressmen, both locally. I mean, we have a distribution list that's pretty extensive in this state, but we can also get one that's pretty extensive out of the state. And I think just making people aware of this by bringing them to our website is going to accomplish a couple of things. We have accomplished a lot of goodwill or good work with this caucus, and we have the attention of most of the elected officials in the state. We also have a pretty good representation at the federal government from our state as well, for veterans benefits. And I think what we do is we start to profile these people and to actually tell their stories. And let's start with creating that, and so we can go to a repatriated portion of our website, and we'll start sending links out to people every time we publish one and say, "Have you read this? Can you come and read this?" And at the same time, in that same section, we put a link to recommended legislation that needs to be passed in the state and also at the federal level. I believe that's our best act right now to at least get the word out. And then as we do that, I'll reach out to all of my contacts. I have a relationship with all the U.S. representatives from the state and senators. They know me fairly well. And I'll reach out to them and I'll send things to them as well because I have their email addresses and phone numbers. And we'll see if we can't start the ball rolling.
Well,
Okay.
Commissioner, I'm currently in Central Mexico, but I'll be in Las Cruces next week. I would love to take you out for some coffee. We could game plan, throw spaghetti on the wall.
I've got your WhatsApp. I'll reach out to you.
Yes,
We
sir.
should be able to get a resolution on this issue because it seems so grossly unfair
I
that
agree.
somebody should serve in the military and then get booted out of the country. I would have believed Dee if I had, I joined a week after my 18th birthday, and I would have believed that if I served my 2 years, that I was automatically a citizen. I would have believed that. I mean,
And especially with what Charles is bringing up, that in fact, the oath you take going into the military covers everything for naturalization, plus the benefit of getting to go and fight and possibly die for your country. So exactly. I want to ask two things. I think we need to do a position paper on this. And Dorothy's not here, but Diane is here. We spent a lot of time last year writing position papers on certain bills and resolutions. Dee or Nick, do you have information, or do you have a position paper, or it's like a white one-page summary and it includes some asks? Do you have that, or do you have some information you could send to us so that we could research that and pull that together?
Of course, we'll get that together for you. That's no problem.
Good. And the other question, before more people sign off, because a lot of people had to leave around 6, anyone here who would like to be involved with this, since you're sitting on this Zoom, would you please reach out to the Veterans Caucus and let us know? We may put together a little task force, 4 or 5 people that could get some energy into this, and they would work with the Committee for Veterans Advocacy. And I'd like to move this forward. I want to get this to all of our 3 congressional representatives, to our 2 senators, but then certainly to our folks working in the Roundhouse. So if any of you want to follow through, want to continue this conversation, nmvetscaucus@gmail.com, please reach out. Okay?
One more thing I'd like to say before I have to run, and that
Yes, sir.
is if we could find currently active duty veterans, okay, who are in this situation where they stand to lose their access to the U.S. when they get out, and get their stories as well, I think that would also help us to establish the problem as being both relevant and current. So if we can find any that are active, that are currently,
that veteran that it's in San Diego. He's not in New Mexico, but he's a Korean veteran in San Diego.
that doesn't matter. It only matters that we capture as many relevant profiles as we can of people who have already suffered and the ones that are at risk, so we can raise the level of urgency and sense of urgency on how critical this is. That's what I'm looking for. And if we can do that, I think that'll help us. That'll help us to help you, is my point. Okay.
Miss Claudia, I want to leave on this one point. Mr. Powell was bringing up mental health earlier. Last year around this time, well, 2 years ago around this time, I was linking up with a veteran who was living in Nuevo Laredo at the time. When he first got deported, he was kidnapped and tortured to an inch of his life. And for some odd reason, by the grace of God, they let him go. Now, I met with this deported veteran in Chihuahua, to relocate him to Juarez. And when I was talking to him, when I first met him at the bus stop, we were talking about his life and, his time in the service, how he felt betrayed. And this goes into the mental health portion of it. And this happens in every house I've been to. I was telling him, after you've suffered so much and you've lost so much, his wife left him. His kids don't even know who he is. His daughter scorns him, even though she's a child. She doesn't understand the situation. I asked him, why haven't you tried to kill yourself? It was around 1 o'clock in the morning. We're getting tacos in Chihuahua in the centro. He takes a sip of his Coca-Cola. He looks at me and he says, you know what? I'm gonna be honest with you. I've overdosed on pills. I've actually tried to hang myself, and I did hang myself, but the rope snapped. We were able to relocate him to Juarez, connect him with a lawyer, and he's currently living in San Antonio, Texas. The work pays off, but it's like it's real elbow grease. Every person I've talked to, suicide is often brought up. So if we could keep in mind like the mental health aspect of it moving forward, because without a question, my brothers and sisters are willing to go to Fallujah. They're willing to go through the jungles of Vietnam. But when it's all said and done, like we did with the Afghans interpreters and the Iraqi interpreters, we're thrown away like government scraps. We really need to hold our government accountable for their actions. So thank you for allowing us this space.
Oh, you're
Sorry,
muted.
I'm on mute. Okay, I'd like to introduce two more people that are on that joined just a couple minutes late, so that Nick and Dee, you understand who your audience is. Pat Gaston, are you available? Pat is the president of the Women Veterans of New Mexico, and she and most of her 8 siblings have all served in the military. Pat, if you can introduce yourself. She's on mute. The other person, where do we go? Key, are you here? She just came
I
up.
am here.
All
Better
right.
late than never. I had to buy a new VPN to get on this call.
Key, could you take a minute and introduce yourself, please, to the group here? And then Pat, I see you're on, so I'll call you right after Dee, or after Key.
Yeah, I'm from Albuquerque, grew up there on the west side. I now live in Guatemala, and I am the chair of the Democrats Abroad Veterans and Military Families Caucus. And Claudia, you and I were on another meeting a few months ago, and it escapes me as to what it was, but yeah, we the VMF, DA-VMF caucus, have set repatriation of deported veterans as one of our priorities for this year, and I know it will be next year also. I think it was in January, we had a podcast with Mr. Smith of the Black Deported Veterans of America. Yeah, and with your permission and my luck in finding the link, I will put that link in the chat for anyone who would want to hear that. Yeah.
Thank you, Key. I think we were both on the meeting with the DNC. Veterans and Military Family Caucuses.
Right.
Others.
That's when it was. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
That's-
thank you so much. And please do put that information in the chat.
Okay, I will. Thank you.
And Pat Gaston, over to you, ma'am. Introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. Yes, my name is Pat Gaston.
She's a woman of few words and bad connections. She is the president of the Women Veterans of New Mexico. And there she is. Go ahead, Pat. And you're on mute. You're on mute.
Thank you. I'm on the phone, so it's just not very stable. But anyway, I just really want to applaud the people that are speaking and have done so much work and have gone back and forth across the borders to help our fellow sisters and brothers. I mean, it's just incredible that, one, you shouldn't have to do it, but two, that you do it because the need is there. So my hat's off to you for the work you're doing. And as part of the women veterans in New Mexico, if you have any women veterans that are in need, that are going through this, please reach out to us and we can definitely assist. Thank you.
Pat, would you put your contact information in the chat, please, ma'am?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right. Any, Frank, what do you think about all this? You've recently joined us. We're thrilled to have you on board. Any comments?
No, I enjoyed, I learned a lot, and it's eye-opening and stuff. So I'm just glad to be affiliated with people that are caring about so many things that are so important to us. Thank you.
And I just want to add that the last document that I dropped in the chat is the advocacy toolkit. That document has several links in there. We're working at ACLU. It's part of the advocacy for this bill, and they created a spreadsheet that has the priorities and like all the representatives, their contact information, and all of those things. It's open to anyone who wants to help in the effort. So when you're reading it, there's some links in there, and I just dropped the last link is if you want to join our legislative coalition, there's a link. Just add your information in there. We're going to have our first meeting on this Friday, and if at least you add your email address, we can send out any notes or anything that will be coming up. We love to have your input and participation in it, because we can't do it ourselves. We need everybody's help.
Well, we're happy to jump in and join you, Dee. The 3 documents that you sent me yesterday, Tammy Bryant, who's chair of our communications committee, sent that out on the newsletter to all 657 subscribers.
Thank you so
So
much.
hopefully someone will open those and read them. But folks, if you're able to click on the stuff in the chat, do so, and you can follow up later, or you can check our newsletter that went out this morning about 7:30 this morning. So is there anything else? Any last questions? Bob, Sue, folks? I want to thank you so much, Dee and Nick. This is very depressing, but it makes me angry and want to fix it and get something done. And if nothing else, we've got an audience of fixers. People know how to turn to and get some things done here. So I think we've helped raise the awareness. And the meeting is being recorded, and we're going to save it, and we will put the link out there on our website. So anybody who missed this and wants to listen to it, it'll be available for them probably in a day or two. Ivan does some good editing. Okay?
Thank you. Thank you,
All right,
guys, and have a good night.
Thank you so much. And thanks for joining us from all over. Nick and Key, we really appreciate it. And Dee. All right, take care. Have a nice evening, folks.
God bless you.
Okay,
Right,
bye.
too.